Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Two of the most popular and productive football seniors on Alabama's roster have been rewarded. Blake Sims and Justin Fowler have accepted invitations to the Senior Bowl in Mobile. That's coming up in January. They'll both get to show their stuff to NFL scouts and coaches. And more good news for Sims. He finds himself on the cover of not one, but two national magazines. Sports Illustrated released this cover. Boy, that looks good. And he's also on the cover of this week's ESPN, the magazine. It's a good week to be Blake Sims. And after waiting for a long time, it's been a good year to be Blake Sims. And with that, good evening, everybody. Welcome into Tider Insider TV. It's always good to be Rodney Orr.
Absolutely.
I'm just living in the shadow. I'm Gary Harris. Our program brought to you each and every week by Buffalo Rock, proud bottlers of Pepsi Cola products. And I love that sound. Like Pepsi Next. You know what I always say about Pepsi Next?
What?
All the great Pepsi flavor. 2/3 less calories than regular Pepsi. Only 60 calories per 12-ounce can. So you can enjoy the flavor and not put on the pounds.
There you go.
All right, and I need help with that, that's for sure. All right, Rodney, let's get right to it. Alabama practiced for 7 straight days. The only time they do that other than bowl season is during fall camp. They took a break after yesterday's practice. They'll reconvene on Friday. And you and I have been to the viewing sessions for the practices. Talk about preparation for Ohio State in the All-State Sugar Bowl coming up January 1st and how you think it's gone so far.
Well, I tell you what, really the limited amount of time that we get to watch, it's really hard to difficult to make any judgments, but it seems like, you know, from the comments of the players, certainly from the comments of Coach Saban, that, you know, they're very pleased with everything that's happened thus far, or most of what's happened. And, you know, Gary, when you look at them out there, they certainly look like there's a little bit more. You just get a sense. You can tell they've picked it up a notch. There's another level of intensity they've reached. You
know, you mentioned intensity, and you mentioned 7 straight days, or I mentioned 7 straight days of practicing, but unlike fall camp, when you're preparing for a season, you're preparing for a big body of work. Now you're preparing for one game,
right.
You know, do or die. And you mentioned the focus. I would assume that's probably normally the case, that everything's heightened a little bit because you know who's going to be playing. You're not trying to settle spots. You're focused on one thing, and that's beating the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and you know, we've been here before. It's much like what we experienced when they prepared for Texas, or when they prepared for LSU again, or when they prepared for Notre Dame a couple of years ago. I mean, it's just getting ready to play the big game, which is this time the playoff game against Ohio State. And again, I think when you look at what Alabama you know, has done, Gary, throughout this season, they've done a really good job of maintaining focus when they've had, you know, most of the season since the October 4th loss to Ole Miss has been a do-or-die situation. So they've kind of been in the situation where they've had to maintain strong focus each and every week.
Of course, the difference this year, if you beat Ohio State, you got one more game to play, but you can't worry about that until you take care of the Buckeyes. Here's Nick Saban on maximizing the workout time.
The most important thing is to maintain intensity during this time so that we can continue to improve and really, you know, pay attention to detail, try to get a good grasp on the game plan so that, you know, when we come back after Christmas, we're not trying to learn a bunch of new stuff. We're just trying to get what we do know right and executed so that we can go out there and play our best.
Clearly, Rod, Coach Saban doesn't want the squad to peak too early. At the same time, while he wants them to enjoy this Christmas break, he wants them to be focused when they get back on Friday. So you're kind of balancing football with, you know, the holiday season and being around your friends and your family. But one other good thing about this break, and let's be honest, even though they practice 7 straight days, guys like T.J. Yeldon haven't had to be pushed that hard. You see number 4 right there. But now a few more days before they ratchet it up again for Yeldon to get healthy.
Yep, been a great opportunity to relax, rest some of these guys to some extent. You mentioned with T.J. Yeldon, certainly, you know, he's had nagging injuries throughout the entire season, it seems like, and, you know, especially here of late. So it's been a great opportunity to give him some time away where it's not so much, he can kind of relax with that hamstring that he's had.
Yeah, dealing with that hamstring. Some other guys, Amari Cooper wearing that knee brace, but it hasn't slowed him down one bit. So, yeah, you know, there's work still to be done. and much more work once they leave Saturday for New Orleans, but you have to feel like this team's at a pretty good point right now in terms of its preparation. Speaking of preparation, you know the Dan Moe and Urban Meyer connection, Mississippi State to Ohio State. Well, Nick Perry says it's clear to him the Buckeyes remind him of the Bulldogs.
They're a great team, and I see a lot of similarities between them and Mississippi State. And they like to establish the run game, and they have a great group of receivers, and they like to get the ball out here in space and just make big plays.
There is a lot of similarities to when Dan and Urban were together at Florida, but I think the way they do it, they have their own style of doing it, and I think they've progressed. And this is a very, very good offensive team that has been very, very productive.
Well, folks, if you follow the Alabama program, Rodney, you and I certainly know that Coach Saban doesn't have a problem telling us what's on his mind. When he's got a point to make, he makes it. That was the case this past Saturday following practice. He was prodded a little bit, but used the press conference as an opportunity to talk about second chances. Of course, defensive lineman DJ Petway was dismissed from school and from the squad, went over to Scuba, Mississippi, played a year at East Mississippi Community College, got himself in shape both athletically, academically, and personally, came back this year to Alabama and has had a heck of a year, both in the classroom and on the football field. And Nick Saban says, you know what, instead of always criticizing people, sometimes you just need to look at giving them another opportunity.
There's always a lot of criticism out there. When somebody does something wrong, everybody wants to know, how are you going to punish the guy? All right, but there's not enough for 19 and 20-year-old kids, people out there saying, why don't you give them another chance? All right, so I'm going to give a speech right now about this. Like, where do you want him to be? Guy makes a mistake. Where do you want him to be? You want him to be in the street? Or do you want him to be here graduating? I feel strong about this now, really strong. All right, about all the criticism out there of every guy that's 19 years old that makes a mistake, and you all kill him. And then some people won't stand up for him. So my question to you is, where do you want him to be? You guys are getting me fired up. You better be careful on this one, buddy. You might want to just pass that thing on down the road.
I'd say he got his point across.
He did. He did. And, you know, he's done a masterful job with giving guys a second chance, Gary, because he brings them in, he puts them in good situations, not really with a lot of pressure per se. I mean, he gives them a chance, opportunities to succeed by putting them in great positions and not at the risk of the team, because, you know, he's had guys that came in here, Deron Carter, for example. I mean, here's a guy that transferred in here, never could quite get everything settled and never played and had to move on.
Each case is you know, different, and he takes it on a case-by-case basis. Well, more to come on Tider Insider TV, including our weekly look at Crimson Tide players in the National Football League. Some milestones this weekend for one former Tide star. But next, we'll dive into the Ohio State Buckeyes. Urban Meyer's squad has Alabama's full attention. We'll check in with our friends at WBNS TV in Columbus to get a closer look behind enemy lines. And coming up, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets, as we always like to do. 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. That's the telephone number. You can email us at the address there on the screen or reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag TiderInsiderTV. More of the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the award-winning Tider Insider Television, on this Christmas Eve, I guess, huh? 2 days before Christmas. We're back after this. Welcome back to Tider Insider Television. Eddie Lacy had a great year for the Green Bay Packers. Again, this 44-yard touchdown run on Sunday put him over 1,000 for the season. The first time in Packers history a player has started his career with consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and 10 touchdown seasons. John Brockton had consecutive 1,000-yard seasons as well, but Lacy, 10 touchdowns each year, too. He is something else. And look at Dre Kirkpatrick. People said, you know, he wasn't going to make it in the NFL. Tell Peyton Manning that. This pick six clinched it last night for the Bengals over the Broncos. He also had another interception of Manning. He's had 3 in the last 2 weeks, 4 for the season. So he is coming around in his 3rd year in the National Football League. Here's some other notable performances. Julio Jones playing injured with a hip, still caught 7 balls for 107 yards against the Saints. Kareem Jackson, 2 interceptions off the Ravens. Joe Flacco, Rashad Johnson, 8 tackles for the Cardinals and a loss. They call him the Bill Belichick of their defense out there. Calls all the plays on defense. Dante Hightower's having an all-pro type season for the Patriots, and Mark Ingram got a touchdown for the Saints in their loss to the Falcons. Well, since Alabama has started working on Ohio State, I figure it's a really good time to discuss what the Buckeyes do well as we move towards game week. And Rodney, what impresses you most when you look at this Ohio State team?
Well, first of all, Gary, they're a team that's faced some adversity. Let's be honest. When you're down to your third-team quarterback and you're in the Big Ten championship game and you respond the way they do, what can you say? I mean, you have to tip your hat to them. You know, defensively, they've got some really good players up front. Joey Bosa, everybody knows about him. Now, again, Alabama recruited a lot of these guys. Adolphus Washington's another one. Michael Bennett's one. Curtis Grant at linebacker. Raekwon McMillan's a young linebacker that plays for them that Alabama really recruited hard. Von Bell in the secondary. He's another guy that Alabama recruited. You know, offensively, they've got some weapons. Devin Smith, you saw him a second ago, number 9's an outstanding wide receiver. The quarterback, Cordell Jones, he's limited, you know, in terms of what he's played, but he really did well in the, you know, in the championship game. And Ezekiel Elliott really had a big-time game as well, and he's an outstanding running back.
Rodney, the bottom line is Urban Meyer coached in the SEC. He's recruiting like he's in the
That's
SEC,
right.
and he's building an SEC-style team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, he is. He's recruiting a lot of players from the Southeast.
They're already hard to handle in the Big Ten and getting hard to handle nationally. All right, to get a little further in depth now with the Ohio State team, we go to our friends in Columbus, Ohio at WBNS. Sports reporter Kayla Anderson has more on the Buckeyes.
Hey there, I'm Kayla Anderson with 10 TV Sports in Columbus, Ohio. The Buckeyes semifinal matchup with #1 Alabama is still a couple weeks away, but they are already focused on beating the Crimson Tide. Ohio State's defense has fond memories of its last performance, one that shut down Wisconsin and the nation's leading rusher in Melvin Gordon. But this Tide team is much more balanced, and the Buckeyes know they have to even work harder as one unit.
Mentally, we're in a very good spot. I think there's a lot of confidence and a lot of belief that we can be good. Our challenge is to play a game like that consistently from week to week. I mean, throughout the course of the year, we showed signs of improvement each week. I think that last game was really a sign of what we can be and what we should be moving forward.
Well, joining me now to break some of this playoff game down, it's Ben Axelrod from Bleacher Report and Jeff Svoboda from Buckeye Sports Bulletin. Thanks, you guys, for joining me. I want to talk about, first, Cordell Jones and really what we saw of him just kind of stepping on the scene in that Wisconsin game and really dominating. Can he do anything like that in a game against Alabama?
We'll see. It's only his second start. You know, Alabama has a very, very talented defense. This is one of Nick Saban's best defenses, and that's certainly saying something. But Wisconsin was the #2 defense in the country, and we saw what Cordell Jones did to them. He's a mature guy. He's 22 years old. He's very poised back there in the pocket. Not quite the runner Braxton Miller or even JT Barrett is, but he's going to have his hands full with the Crimson Tide, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I had absolutely no idea what to expect out of Cordell Jones in that game, just because, you know, never started a game. They barely let him throw a pass really until the Illinois game, which was about, you know, game 8 or 9 of the season. But he went out there, threw the ball really well, passed that test with flying colors. But sometimes the second start, you know, backing up what you did in the first one is the hardest thing to do in sports. You know, they say beginner's luck or whatever it may be. But we will have to see that out of Cordell Jones because, you know, Alabama, obviously a great defense, as you said. Nick Saban knows how to scheme with the best of them. You know, will he be able to kind of handle that in the atmosphere of the Sugar Bowl, where there's going to be, you know, a split fan base and you know, the playoff atmosphere?
Well, there isn't too much film on him, so that's one good thing. But one person who has a lot of film, Amari Cooper. I mean, that is Alabama's go-to guy. He's been huge, obviously a Heisman candidate. Can they do anything to slow him down?
Well, I'd say the one thing that bodes well for the Buckeyes is that Deron Grant, their #1 cornerback, is an all-Big Ten corner. Sure. He's played very well in the second half of the season. And the best wide receiver Ohio State's faced this year, Tony Lippett at Michigan State, Ohio State held in check. So that bodes well for the Buckeyes, but you're right, Amari Cooper's a whole nother animal.
Yeah, and when you go back to that Lippett game, they put Grant on him exclusively. Like sometimes they switch, you know, cornerbacks based on where the guys lined up. But you know, against that game, you know, against the best receiver they played, they said, Duran, you know, this is your job. Go out there and kind of, you know, take him out of the game. And he did a really good job of that, as you said. I would expect a very similar thing against Alabama, as far as, you know, they're going to put Duran Grant on Amari Cooper and say, do your best here. We might give you some help every once in a while, but you know, that big fast guy across the line from you, good luck. And so how that ends up kind of breaking down, that's going to be really maybe the #1 key matchup in the game, because if Ohio State has to, you know, help out Duran Grant, then the run game gets going for Alabama, and that could be a long night for the Buckeyes.
Hey, well, I think this one's going to be a good one for Ben and Jeff. I'm Kayla Anderson. We'll send it back to you guys.
Thank you very much. Some in-depth stuff there in Ohio State. And all I can say is, hey, I understand the logic, but anybody trying to play Amari Cooper one-on-one, I think Alabama will take their chances with that matchup.
And he mentioned Wisconsin does have a fine defense.
Yeah.
They're not athletically at Alabama's level, let's be honest. And, you know, it hit me, Gary, watching that video real quickly, who Cardale Jones kind of reminds me of a little bit. Rohan Davey.
A lot.
Former Nick Saban quarterback at LSU.
Yeah, hopefully he won't sling it around against Alabama
no,
the way
no,
Davey did.
No,
all
especially
right.
not in 2001 when he did here.
Yeah, Saban was on the other sideline then. So, all right, more to come on TITV, including a couple of new Alabama Sports Hall of Fame inductees to discuss. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Once again, there's the information on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV will return right after this timeout. Three new members to the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame with Crimson Tide ties. Quarterback Jay Barker, the '92 National Championship team. And Bama Hoop stars Enos Watley, boy, he was a magician, and Derek McKee out of Meridian, Mississippi, are all part of an 8-man class to be inducted later on. Here's a look at the whole lot of them. Alabama and Auburn are represented in football. And how about Evander, the real deal Holyfield, former unanimous world heavyweight champion of the heavyweight champion of the world. He was born in Atmore, and now he's a member of the State Sports Hall of Fame as well. All right, Roddy, you ready to head to the Med Center hotline for some phone calls? First up is Rick in Bluff Park. Hey, Rick, welcome in. How are you?
Just fine, fellas. How y'all doing this evening?
Very well.
Good deal. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Same to you.
I'd like to ask how recruiting in general is going in the state of Mississippi. There was a linebacker from over there that had committed and flipped to one of the state teams over there, and also a safety over that way from Bassfield.
We got you. Yeah, Rick. Thanks for the phone call. I know a lot of Alabama fans, Rodney, are concerned. The last couple of years, not as many players have been signed out of Mississippi, but that's a state Alabama's always going to recruit. Now, Ole Miss and Mississippi State have ratcheted it up there as far as keeping players in state, but Alabama continues to recruit that state and will recruit it every year.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, don't forget, there are a lot of top-notch junior college players in the state of Mississippi. Alabama's really done well over there. DJ Petway, Jaron Reed last year. They're still recruiting a guy in the junior college ranks over there now, defensive lineman Jonathan Taylor. And, you know, Gary, talking about Ole Miss, Mississippi State, you talked about how they've kind of made more of a concerted effort to keep players in the state. And what happens is once you have success keeping your players in the state, they see your program improving. You know, it makes it a lot easier to recruit your in-state players. And he's talking about Jamal Peters, who's committed to Mississippi State, the safety from Bassfield, and Leo Lewis, once committed to Alabama, who's now, you know, he's kind of going back and forth between Ole Miss and Mississippi State, had committed to Ole Miss, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It's still a long time until signing day. A lot can happen. All right, let's go to Birmingham and talk to Bill. Bill, welcome into the program.
Hey, good evening, guys. Well, you pretty much answered the questions over there about Ohio State, but what area do you think that Ohio State matches up well? And tell us a little bit more about their quarterback and what kind of threat that he poses.
All right, thank you, Bill. First of all, and I'll let Rodney take care of both of these, I think their defensive line is very athletic. It's much like an SEC line. They can get after the quarterback. That's an area where Alabama will have to really shore up, and that's the offensive line against their defensive line. You agree?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, Gary, it's a little bit like Missouri in terms of their pass rush. Ohio State has 40 sacks, so they can really pressure the quarterback, and Joey Bosa really makes it difficult on offensive tackles, Gary. And, you know, on the flip side of that, he's talking about some of their other strengths. I think their skill people are really good on offense. That's one thing that I think in terms of speed that Urban Meyer's done an outstanding job of really kind of developing those areas.
As we said, they're an SEC-type team. And real quickly on Cardale Jones, he's not going to run it like the other two quarterbacks, but he's a big, strong guy. He can run some, but he's got a live arm. Now, he can sling it down the field, and Alabama's giving up big plays. That's
and the truth is, and he did hit some big throws. I think he hit 3 for over 35 yards in the Big Ten championship game. So that has been a concern. But, Gary, it's also really somewhat of a concern when we really don't know a lot about him because he hasn't played that much. And, you know, I think sometimes people kind of relax or feel comfortable. But you remember last year, I mean, people really went into the Oklahoma game thinking that, you know, their difficulties at quarterback were going to be, you know, too much for them to overcome. And Trevor Knight had the game of his career. All
right, I tell you what we're going to do. BJ says we're getting up against the clock. Bama Jack in Northport, you stay on hold. You hold with us, and we will get to your phone call coming up after the break because we do have more TI TV coming up, including an update on the Alabama men's basketball team. And as we said, more phone calls. We'll get to Bama Jack in Northport next, so stay with us. We'll be back right after this. Bama basketball update. The Crimson Tide just finished up a tough stretch, playing 4 games in 9 days. They went 3-1. Their only loss was that heartbreaker at Wichita State when they blew an 11-point lead in the final 5 minutes. Coach Anthony Grant discussing taking the momentum that they've built into the Christmas break.
This has been a tough stretch for us. Not only on the court, 4 games in 9 days, but the end of the semester. They're the only ones on campus right now. They did a pretty good job from an academic standpoint. I think this is a good time to give them a few days to themselves to enjoy their families, get away from basketball and our voices a little bit, and come back and be refreshed and renewed.
And here's a look at the upcoming schedule for the Tide. UCLA, a big home game coming up next Sunday. Then it's North Florida, and then into the SEC, a home game against Texas A&M before traveling to Knoxville to take on Tennessee on January the 10th. Let's head right back to the Med Center hotline. Bama Jack has been holding in Northport. You got it, Bama Jack. Go ahead.
Hey, Merry Christmas, Gary Rodney. My question is, with the type of recruits Urban Meyer's getting, his formations and his play calling, do y'all think he might be trying to take Southern-style football to the Big Ten?
Do I think he?
Yeah, Southern-style football to the Big Ten. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Yeah, I do. I think he sees that as a blueprint for success.
It's clear. I mean, when you look at the athletes that he's recruiting, Jack, I think again, he's dipping down into the states of Florida. He's got some really skilled athletes down there that he's plucked. He got Raekwon McMillan, an outstanding linebacker from the state of Georgia last year. Continues to recruit down in the Southeast.
Yeah, he definitely knows what it takes to win a national championship, and as I said, already dominating the Big Ten, and they're a player now in the national stage for sure. All right, let's go to Saginaw and talk to William. Go ahead, William.
Hey, guys. My question is, do you think we'll load the box to stop the run, play man-to-man, or play more of a disguised defense against them?
Well, William, they'll do what they always do. They're going to mix it up. I mean, there's going to be some combination coverages. There'll be some man-to-man. There'll be some zone. I don't think they're going to just load up to stop the run. I think, Jones and those receivers can make you pay. I think they'll try to, if you hear this on offense, I think they'll try to be balanced on defense. I think they'll try to be equally effective against the run and the pass and make some plays on defense.
And when you listen to the Ohio State people, what they kind of expect from Alabama, they're expecting different things. They're expecting Alabama to try to keep the quarterback Jones confused and off balance, and also do some stunning and different things up front defensively to kind of confuse that offensive line.
All right, wish we could take more phone calls, but that's all that we have time for tonight. Thank you for the calls. Phones, we're lighting up. Well, coming up on TITV, we've got a little Sugar Bowl flashback. There was a time when Alabama fans did get a hold of the goalpost. We got the video evidence coming up on TITV. Stay with us. As far as we can find out in our research, Alabama fans had never rushed the field and gotten a hold of the goalpost at either Legion Field or Bryant-Denny Stadium. But in the 1978 Sugar Bowl, when the Tide pummeled Ohio State 35-6, fans got on the field, and yes, you'll see it on this old film clip, courtesy of the Bryant Museum. The goalpost did come down, Rodney, so it has happened. All right, that's going to do it for Tider Insider TV. Our thanks to the good friends at the Locker Room for outfitting us in these original elephant wear dress shirts. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Merry Christmas, everyone. Good night.